Let there be light.
We have a liftoff.
Let there be light indeed. Today, after almost a year of use, I am happy to put in my review of a pair of Chinese import bike lights, currently lighting the way on my specialized dentist bike. So, for your illumination, here's the Towild BR800 front light and the Onvian Q5 smart tail light. But first, I must acknowledge my inspiration for this video. My friend Joe in Xiamen, China, better known as China Cycling, who a few years ago reviewed a much greater number of Chinese manufactured lights, and he raised my awareness of what's out there and just how strong a light one can get without spending a mint on lighting. His video is a definite must-see, and you'll find a link in the description. More recently, I've seen videos of lights boasting 8,000 and more lumens, which for the city riding I do is way overkill. I hate cars with their brights on, and while a turnabout might be fair play, I really don't want to be that asshole. Years ago, I had a old 10K studio light shining into my work from a lighting shop neighbor where I was working from, about 100 feet away, and it was like having to stare down with the sun itself. My history with bike lighting goes back to the 1970s, when most lights were still rather bullet-shaped, and I was relying on something battery-powered and that could barely be called a flashlight. It did less than dick to light up my path, and I ran into a parked truck once because of it. Later, I used a couple of different generator-powered lights, which ran off of a tire and worked a whole lot better, especially the Union lighting set, which was the very best you could get back in the disco age, though you did have to deal with the noise and the extra power needed to pedal with a generator. I mean, who really knew about watts in those days? And of course, when you had to stop at an intersection or anywhere else, the lights went out and you were invisible again. A couple decades later, I had this specialized front light, which was an improvement, and in the years before I got to work on Star Trek, this very model light was reworked to become an engineering prop on Voyager. Unfortunately, I don't know which episodes it appeared in, so please comment if you know so I may check it out. My last lights before the current Towild light were kryptonite models, mostly because of the tree lock mounting system they came with. The tree lock system, in my opinion, is way superior to any other light mounting device. Sure, the sliding latches that most lights come with are fine and all, until something breaks. Usually it's the thumb release lever that breaks off first, followed by the plastic clamp band, making it almost impossible to repair without having to get a whole new light. The tree lock clamp, however, is very simple and positive, and thanks to modern prop making methods, when my first clamp broke, I was able to replace it with a 3D printed clamp way more substantial than the original. I also made a tree lock mount that fits onto a Garmin mount, so I may have a light on my road bikes. But the big disadvantage to kryptonite lights, I can't replace the battery. They've made it impossible to put a new battery in without destroying the light first. It's permanently sealed in place, and that really sucks. So after a bit of searching for something to meet my needs, I came across the Towild BR800. It's not the brightest light out there, and not the brightest one that they offer, but it does put out a claimed 800 max lumens with several lower light levels and flashing modes. But the biggest selling points for me were the replaceable battery and the Garmin mount, capable of being fitted in any Garmin quarter-turn cup. The battery is a standard 18650 size at 2000 milliamp hours, and can replace with a 2600 one if you really need the extra capacity. There are 3 steady-on modes and 2 flasher modes. I find with the single button it can be a bit difficult to get the light to your selected mode, especially if switching from flash to steady and vice versa. But once there, it will remember the last mode you had it at next use. The lens itself is shaped to be less glaring at cars and passerby, and the twist-off head can be put on upside down, so if you mount the light underneath the bars, it can remain right side up. I can't say if the anti-glare feature actually works, as I'm not in the habit of standing in front of my bike being blinded by the light and revved up like a douche in the middle of the night, but it does work. The light is charged with an included USB-C cable. Charging time depends on how much juice your charger provides. And yes, those are a lot of good things about the Towild BR800. But here's the bad. The Garmin mounting disc. Yes, it worked fine as is, but it's made of cheap plastic that looks like it would break off with any sort of force. The Amazon page for the light where I bought it suggests that the light is made of aircraft aluminum, and indeed it is, on the front end. The battery body, however, is molded plastic. And if you stick around to the end, I came up with a longer lasting solution to it because the Garmin disc actually broke on me. The band clamp is fine, though you can easily replace it with a native Garmin or K-Edge or any other aftermarket computer mount. And the quarter turn system works great, but there is no left or right adjustment for the light, and you're stuck with the direction it's pointing at. And there's no up or down either if you're fitting it to an integrated mount like what most Garmin handlebars have nowadays, where the computer kind of points towards the user, and if you put a light on it, it's going to point upwards, and you really don't want that. The VR800 also comes with a GoPro to Garmin adapter, which is great for mounting on the helmet. But I tried it on my wind space as is, and it refused to tighten up in the metal bracket. The reason is the tangs measured a few thousand smaller than those on an original GoPro spec mount, the opposite of my experience with Chinese replica mounts, which tend to be thicker than original. I added some thin shims, which thickened them enough to work, but to be fair, if the Towild mount had been put in a plastic mount, it might have flexed enough to allow it to be tightened. I carry two rear lights on my commute bike. One is a Surface brand light I really like because of its size, and that one I recently replaced the battery because the lithium polymer cell had inflated and become worthless, and I was able to put in one with more milliamp hours so it lasts longer between charges. But the light for review is the Onvian Q5 Smart Tail Light. The Q5 is of all metal construction and is a common style for a smart light, where you not only get several steady and flashing modes, but they also come with a accelerometer, so it can act like a brake light and increase to max the light level whenever it senses you are slowing down or stopping. The Q5 will also shut off in some of the modes automatically after a time of no movement, and will go back on whenever you move it again. The Q5 has 4 tiny blue lights representing the charge level, and it promises 30 to 50 hours of flashing light, which quite frankly is way better than the Surface light and, well, probably most other lights. There are 2 mounting methods: the traditional rubber band seat post mount and a nifty metal bracket secured to the saddle rails, both of which that the light comes with. And the light itself is screwed onto the mounts, which actually does take quite a few turns to seat and remove. The light is charged using a micro USB cable after unscrewing it from your bike. The light works well in all modes, and it's easy to get it to whatever light you desire. And the battery life is really phenomenal. I have not once ran it out completely during a ride, and for my regular commute it could be like 3 or more months of one charge, assuming it's used once a day before needing to recharge the battery. Now for the bad, there is no replacing the Q5's battery, but for now it's not really a problem. The light could flash somewhat brighter, though I suppose if you're trying to do a braking light, you don't want it to have it on max all the time. And the brake light feature is hit or miss. It either works or it doesn't, and it seems to work at random for the most part. Now I can live with random for that, however, because it makes you a little more visible, but I don't care so much for the auto on or off, and my habit is usually just to use the switch to turn it off and be sure. And for a tiny battery, when you do plug it into charge, it could take as long as it does for the front light. Before buying this light, I read a number of reviews, both good and bad for identical lights. They either love it or hate it for whatever. But so far it's been a most excellent light for me. The flashlight does what it's supposed to do in all modes, and because I'm easily impressed, it gets top marks. And as an FYI for both lights, they both come with instructions in different languages and were easy to follow. And both are waterproof to IPX6 standards, so they should survive wet weather whenever it rains. I was getting more impressed with the Garmin mounting despite its initial cheapness of quality, and I was going to rate it much higher. And that was until I felt the light becoming looser in the mount, which I didn't realize until one of the tangs on the disc broke completely off, and it caused the light to fall off on the bike during the ride. Going back to the advertising, the Towild did indeed survive a 1 meter drop with only a couple minor scuffs to the body, so that's a plus there. But without a good mount, the light became pretty useless, and it's time to get a new light, right? Wrong! Because I've got the Mad Propz Skillz I did what any good machinist would do, and I made a new disc out of black Delrin. Okay, there we are. So that's what I reproduced there. And I did that. Look at that. Does exactly what it's supposed to do.